Hey everybody, I'm Todd, and this is Sweet Tea Guitars. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel, and welcome to my life. Alright you guys, so in the last video, we got the coat of oil put on the neck, I got the headstock logo cut in, I got this repair made to the body back here. I've since gone last night, I came down here and did the little fill in for that little gap we had, and I wanted to do some extra work on this body, so I covered it with a piece of wax paper just to let it cure overnight. That's that gap taken care of. I've got a bunch of sanding left to do on this body. So last night, I came down here and experimented with a few stains. I had seen a couple of videos on YouTube of guys coating mahogany with yellow. I wiped this down with some honey Angelus leather dye. I've since sanded some of this on the side. You can see right here, that's where the honey's left. I am not particularly fond of what happened when I wiped that on there. Not so much with the Kaya, but that color right there, I wanted a subtle amber color, and that I did not get that result. Now I could sand this back, I could dilute that honey down with some denatured alcohol and thin that color out a little bit, and probably get to the color that I'm thinking in my mind would be acceptable for this guitar. But I think that the Osmo oil is honestly gonna have enough of an ambering effect on this to where I don't need to put anything on it. So I'm gonna leave this just like it is, after I sand it, I mean. So let's just get sanding on this thing. Just to get all this honey off of here, I've got some 150, a slightly used piece of 150 on the sander. We're just gonna go over the top of this guitar. Then we'll get the sides by hand. I don't like using a random orbit sander on any non-flat surface that's thinner than the sander is wide. You take all kind of chances. The biggest thing is I don't want to soften these hard lines I've got. Thank you guys for stopping by the channel today, by the way. This shouldn't take too long. Alcohol-based stain does penetrate, but not that far. All right, let's brush this off, and then I'll take some naphtha and wipe this down real good. And this should help to pull a little bit more of this color out of there if there's any left. This will also make, you know, I can get an idea of anywhere I still need to sand on this thing. I mean, I don't really think that needs to be messed with too much, you know. That's beautiful in its current form. I'm going to take some 180, and I can still see that color in there, but I'm not concerned about a little of it being left. Nobody's really made any recommendations on color for this guitar. And basically what I did by doing that was created a bunch of extra work for myself. But that's guitar building. The one thing about wiping it down with naphtha, even though it bleeds the color back over onto the poplar, naphtha dries so fast, it does not let that stain penetrate deeply down into that poplar, even though poplar is pretty soft. It's a softer hardwood. Short strokes on this back end grain so I don't kill that hard line. All right, so let's sand this back with this 150. And get this nice and flat. Where I've got that little gap that I had to fill, I like that better than I did when the string ferrules were out of alignment. So considering that was my first inlay job, I think that turned out pretty good. We're about to wipe some finish on this guitar. I've got the whole thing sanded. I wound up going over the whole body with 220 grit on the random orbit sander, at least the front and the back. And then I've got the sides sanded up to 360. End grain will accept stain or oil at a different rate than this face grain will, or the long grain. Therefore, I wanted to sand the end grain, especially on both ends of the body. I wanted to sand those to a little bit higher grit, even though we're not staining this body. I don't want the color variation to be so great between those two. We're still going to have a little bit of color variation, but we'll blend that out the best we can. I'm going to put a glove on, and we're going to get some oil put on this body. You know, everything up to this point has led us here. And since there's no stain, I'm going to dip right out of the bucket, and I'm just going to start wiping this on here. Now this poplar is going to drink this wood wax, as will the canary on the first go round, I'm sure. When I've got the rag really saturated with this oil, I want to stay away from those string through ferrules so I don't get too much down inside there. We're just going to keep wiping this stuff on here. I want a good drink. You know, we want to seal these pores up in this wood, so not only will that help the Pollux oil go further, but it'll help harden up this poplar so it's not so prone to dents and everything. We're going to let this sit for about, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes or so after I get this first saturation coat on here. And then we will let this tack up just a little, and then we'll wipe it back. And I'll hang it, we'll let it cure overnight. I really like using an oil finish. First of all, the PPE is way less. You don't have to worry about breathing the vapors coming off of this stuff. Osmo is completely safe to use. So not like using an automotive 2K finish or anything like that. I like the quality of the finish you get. It's not plastic. Osmo is great when it comes to that too. Even though when we start using the Pollux oil, and it is a film finish, it feels really buttery smooth, like really silky. And that's one thing I really love about Osmo, about the Pollux oil as a guitar finish. So I've just got a t-shirt cloth here. I'm just going to go over and kind of buff this into the surface and make sure I'm getting any buildup out of there so I don't have a bunch of cleanup to do after the fact. There we go. I'll let this cure overnight, and then I'll see how this looks tomorrow. And if I decide it needs another round of the extra thin wood wax, we'll do that. I've got a couple of areas I can already see that I'm going to have to touch up a little bit. Look at that coloration, what that Osmo does to that end grain on that poplar. And you can see it goes back light here. That's just one of the things you got to deal with. I like it. I think it gives the guitar character. And I really love the look of that end grain, especially the on that canary. It just looks really nice. I'm going to fold this rag, or unfold this rag, and leave it flat to dry. And then I will dispose of it in a water bucket. Same thing with this rag. It's got Osmo on it. And even though Osmo does not have a lot of chemical dryers added to it, it does have some. And I do not want to take a chance on burning my shop down. So, you know, this place is my life at this point. It would crush me. I decided we're going to go ahead and wipe a coat on this front too. That way, we won't lose any more time waiting for this stuff to cure overnight. I'm really anxious to see what this is going to look like. I know it's going to just look beautiful. I'm not so much worried about the bottoms of the pickup cavities. There's some little knot shadows on each side, but at least they're book matched. I got a couple little dark knot spots over on this side. That's just the character of this wood. I don't mind it at all, honestly. Let's let this sit here for just a moment, and then I'll wipe this back. You see that? That is lovely. I absolutely love this wood. I got this from Fiddleback Wood Shack. The guy's name that owns that company is Felly. He's got some really beautiful guitar tops and woods in general on his website, fiddlebackWoodshack.com. So if you guys are interested in a piece of this Kaya walnut or some maple, myrtle, you know, anything you want. Go check out Felly and tell him Sweet Tea said hello. I'm really happy with this so far. This is going to be beautiful. This is what we're using. Osmo Pollux Satin, product number 3054. I want to make sure I've got all the wax off the bottom and mixed in really well. I've had this sitting on top of the heater over there, and although it's not hot, I did at least want it to get warm. Keep your lid clean and it won't wind up messed all up. So we're going to flip this body upside down and work on the back first. Osmo applies really, really thin. So you want thin coats, but how I like to do this, and this is one reason why I like using the wood wax first. I like putting it on a little bit thick on the first coat, then letting it sit for a little while before we rub it back, and let any of this that wants to seep into the surface, you know, if it wants any more oil that it didn't absorb from the wood wax, then we can get it with the actual Pollux oil. And when you first put it on here, it does not alter the color that much. Now it will amber with age. All right, I can feel it tacking up on the rag. So before this has a chance to get too tacky, we're gonna wipe this back. Now let's start this front. This is gonna be the magic right here. I really want to get this down in that grain. And I'm not so much worried about filling all the grain. I like that natural look, really. But I want to make sure this body's well protected. All right, we'll let that stiffen up for a little bit. And then I'm going to hang it and let it dry. We've got as much on there at this point that I think that wood's going to take for now. And we want this first coat to cure really nice, so the next coat will actually start to build that film. With Osmo, to continue putting it on there back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I have found that is a waste of finish. Between the wood wax, extra thin, and the Pollux oil that we've got on here now, we'll absolutely have enough to get that grain sealed up and allow us to start building a film on the surface of this thing. So it's already getting tacky. I've got it nice and warm in here. So let's just rub this down. You can kind of see that sheen already starting to happen. I've got a little dull spot right in there you can see, but we'll get that as we build that finish. But that is beautiful, is it not? I could go ahead and drop this video right here, but I think I'm going to give it at least one more day, probably two more. That way you guys will get to see the body with all the Osmo Pollux oil on it before we take a break for a few days, let that oil cure. Then the next video will be us starting to assemble this guitar, doing some wiring, doing some fret leveling, things like that. We'll figure out the order when we get closer to that, but we're not far off, you guys. All right, everybody, welcome back. It is Monday, March the 14th today. So I thought that I would come down here and film this process for you guys. I needed to do it anyway, so why not film it, right? The life of a YouTuber. Yeah, I never thought, but I'm so glad that I am. All right, I wanted to show you guys something I like to do. And it's not just me. I mean, there's a lot of guys that do this. I'll use this little half round block we've got here. And I'm just going to take this piece of 1200 and just wrap it around here. This is not adhesive back sandpaper. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this to burnish this next coat of Osmo into this body. I can sand this with the oil as a lubricant. It'll create a slurry of the dust that we're sanding and fill any of the voids, any of that grain, and produce a smoother surface in the end. So let's get on it. And you can always tell when you're mixing a hard wax oil, if you'll lift your stick like this, you'll see if there's any solids that have settled to the bottom after you stir it around a few times. And we appear to be nice and clean down there, so we're good. So I'm just going to take this stick and drizzle some of this oil on this body, and I'll show you guys what I mean. So we'll do the back first, and I'm just going to take and drizzle some of this. It does not take much Osmo. This is wet, dry 1200 grit. And I'm going to try to do the canary first so we don't drag this canary dust over into the grain of the poplar. So I'll take and rub this into that surface. Let's switch and get us a new piece. And I'll move over and do that same thing to the poplar. We'll catch this side first. We need to do this same thing to the front. However, I like the grain of this kaya, so I'm not really wanting to fill it. You know, I want to make sure I get this down inside the grain on that poplar mainly, because that poplar is a softer hardwood. And the more of this I can get down inside that grain and impregnate that wood fiber, the more protection it's going to provide. And I want to get a coat wiped in, and then we'll drizzle some more across here. And I'm going to take a white 3M Scotch-Brite pad, and we will burnish this into the surface. But first, let's make sure we got a nice base coat laid down of this stuff so we know that we've got it all over. This is a white Scotch-Brite. It's non-abrasive, so there is no grit to it. It's just a scouring pad is all it is. And this really burnishes it down into that grain. Again, this is about forcing as much of that oil down inside that grain as we can get. You just keep using Osmo and keep applying coats until it fills up. You'll start building a film up on the surface. So we'll just let this sit here for a couple of minutes. I can already feel it starting to get tacky. Let's just let that stiffen up just a little bit. As soon as it starts to go tacky, it's a good time to buff. Osmo does something for the color on all woods, but on this like golden brown, there's just, I mean, all oil will have a similar effect, but I really love the Osmo. I can't say it enough, and I know you guys probably were like, all right, okay, we get it. You like Osmo. I could literally leave it just like this and it have plenty of protection. That's 2 coats of Osmo, and that's what they recommend on a floor. But I'm going to put a couple more coats on here to fill in some of this grain, if for no other reason to demonstrate to you guys that, you know, that is possible with Osmo. And you can see it deepens that color on the end grain. All right, you guys, so I've wiped the neck down with Osmo now, and we'll let it stiffen up a little bit while we buff this body back. Oh yeah, I can feel some resistance in this now, and that's what I really wanted it to do. So I would say probably anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes at 70 degrees. So here's our neck. You can see the sheen we're getting off of it. Beautiful. I'm going to hang this up. We're going to let it cure overnight. Tomorrow when I come back down here, we'll do exactly the same thing we just did, with the exception of, instead of using the sandpaper to burnish that in, I'll use quadruple aught steel wool. We'll go over that whole body before we put any wet Osmo on it. That'll kind of rough up that surface and give this next coat of oil something to bond to. It's on a microscopic level. You can't even really tell what's happening. But it also helps to start polishing, you know, to polish that surface out. And even though we're not going for a gloss, when I rub the last coat of Osmo on this body, we won't touch it again with an abrasive, whether it be the Scotch-Brite pad, the sandpaper, or steel wool. We'll wipe it down, We'll let it sit for a little bit longer than we think we need to, probably about 15 minutes at 70 degrees. Let it get nice and stiff. Then we'll buff that finish off. After that, we won't touch it again until that finish is cured. And that's how I like to use Osmo to finish a guitar body and a neck. I won't apply as many coats to the fretboard as I do to the back of the neck. It's nice, really hard wood, and what I'm really protecting the fretboard from is dirt. And we've already sealed it with 2 coats of wood wax. So now what we're wanting to do is fill up that grain just a little with the Pollux oil, get a nice satin sheen so it matches the rest of the neck, and we'll probably wipe the fretboard down 1 more coat of Pollux oil. We'll do 2 or 3 more coats on the neck because the neck sees more wear. We might even put 5 more coats on the neck. We'll see. You can see right there we're getting some beautiful results. I am so happy with this top. Poplar is taking on an interesting character as we wipe this oil on here. It's starting to get, you know, especially the end grains getting nice and dark and creamy golden brown looking. So I'm happy with it, especially to be poplar. I had a bunch of poplar. I needed to use some, so I chose to use it on this guitar, which is why I put that canary strip down the middle. Give us a little bit more neck stability with a harder wood in the middle. It's decorative. It looks cool. And it turned out that that was a pretty good choice, I think. And everybody seems to like it pretty good. So I've got some quadruple aught steel wool right here. We're going to take this to the back of this body. All I want to do is take care of any little uneven spots that we may have and give ourselves a surface to bond this next coat of oil to. So we're back to the Osmo Pollux oil. All right, you guys have seen this before. So I'm using another one of these, a white 3M Scotch-Brite in combination with this folded piece of t-shirt. Circular motions. Now, when I come back down here tomorrow to do this again, we'll go straight to the white Scotch-Brite pad and start rubbing in this finish. Now we'll let that sit there. We should be good to buff this body at this point. You can kind of tell by how much resistance you get when you go to wipe it off. You don't want to let it get too tacky, but you want it to fight you just a little. All right, you guys, I think it's been long enough. I'll let this go for about 12 minutes. I don't want to leave any puddles or streaks or anything. I'm going to hang this up, let this cure, and we'll do the neck. All right, let's do the same thing to this neck. That thing's got some massive flame figure going on in it. It is just beautiful. This is going to be such a beautiful guitar. I'm so glad I'm able to give this to one of you guys. It makes me feel really good to know I'm going to send this thing off for someone to enjoy. All right, I'm going to hang this up. It's looking beautiful. 1 more coat of oil on the neck, and I think we're probably going to be good. I'll hang it back up and I won't touch it again. We'll buff it down really good when we take it down off the hanger. We'll reinstall our threaded metal inserts. On the body, I will also wipe another coat of oil on the back and the front, and then I can just leave the body hanging for, you know, a day or two while we do the fret work on the neck. I'm not going to do the fret work until I can actually bolt the neck to the guitar. It's about to start coming together, you guys. This weekend, more than likely, we will be screwing that neck to that body. We'll do some dry fits on our tuners. We'll get that nut slot cut in and check fitment on our P90 for the neck, on our bridge pickup, all our controls. And then once we get that neck bolted to the body, We'll do the fret job on that thing, and I'll start assembling this guitar. So I'm getting a case ordered. You guys will get a preview of what the case is going to be before it leaves the shop. All right, you guys, that's going to wrap up episode 14, which has basically just been wiping oil on the body, talking about using Osmo as a finish, and demonstrating how to achieve a desirable result when using that product, in this case, the Pollux Satin Oil, on a guitar. You need to be subscribed by April 24th if you want a chance to win this thing. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Tell all your friends to come and subscribe to Sweet Tea Guitars. And until episode 15, you guys, peace and love.